are coming in smooth this week. Okay.
Are we?
Well, we're trying. It's just that like sometimes before the show, like we have like laughs and giggles and like we smoke weed and not you, but like and like sometimes we have like very emotional and intelligence driven conversations and we did the second one today. Welcome to the show, everybody. As I'm sure you can see and hear, Purvis is not with us. He said, "Fuck them haters, fuck them hoes," and that's why we're not reviewing. And then you pray for me by West Side Gun this week.
One day we'll all three of us will be back on here.
Yeah, well, next week we'll be here for. Wait, are you gonna be here next week?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So next week we'll all be here for the West Side Gun review. But yeah, so we had to make it work. This is what happens. This is what we got. So we got a great show though, because I think we picked an episode that is playing to our strengths.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I think this is something that we're gonna have a lot of fun with because we're gonna be talking about genre crossover, what is, what isn't, all that fun stuff. But yeah, no. So should we just jump straight into the news then, Jasper?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we got appears that we have 3 albums dropping this week, right? Uh we have Sampha's Lahai, we have Conway the Machine and Conductor Williams, Conductor Machine, and City Girls Raw, Real Ass Who's. Yeah.
Who's?
Right? Like you think it would be the other word, right?
Like whose is this?
Yeah. But then it would be Ra. It's
Yeah.
like yeah, no, this is a stellar lineup for the week. I'm a big fan of Conway the Machine and Conductor Williams. You know, Conductor is like him and Derringer are like the sonic drivers behind the Griselda sound, like the hardcore hip hop sound. And Conway is just like I think a top 5 lyricists in the game right now. But that being said, I think Sampha is the album I'm really looking forward for.
Me too. I think it's like you said coming in smooth. That's this.
Yeah, Sampha's so smooth. He doesn't release a lot of music though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to use this as a really good jumping on point for Sampha's music because I've heard like his earlier stuff and obviously like his pretty extensive feature list. Loved his feature on Father Time last year, but this is gonna be my first time to jump onto an album at time of release, which I always feel like is like a different experience, like in a fundamental way, right? Like I was on Reddit. Maybe we can do this as a quick tangent. I was on Reddit the other day, and there was like it was like our unpopular opinions, and someone was like music streaming is ass, and I'm like 1 popular opinion, 2, like yeah you're right, but like I don't think people appreciate. It was from a very audiophile perspective, like oh, it's like a low quality.
Well, yeah,
which is true, which is accurate.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I feel like that misses like the point where it's like, we now have the ability to, with legal means, like listen to all music without like having to pay for a CD that you haven't even heard yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like that's a cultural impact kind of thing, right? And
yeah,
the weirdest response I heard was like someone hit me up and was like, you know, there's websites called like Pitchfork that will help you decide which CDs to buy though. And I'm like, that's not the same. Like how in any world, like, and I'm someone who's like staunchly pro critic. I think one of the most sus ass opinions you can have as a creative is being anti-critic.
Oh yeah.
But like that's insane.
I'm just anti-Pitchfork.
Yeah, no, Pitchfork sucks. Like Pitchfork is like a bad establishment. I like their breadth. That's what I like about Pitchfork. I like that it is one place where I can go and I can I can find out like about like the Zach Bryan album, because like if I go to the places that know what they're talking about the music I really like, they don't even cover music I don't listen to.
Yeah, I feel like of the two, the other one that I think does that well is like Rolling Stone. I think I would still pick Rolling Stone.
I just feel like Rolling Stone is so boomer brains.
No, they are, but at the same time, they are. I think the boomer brain is less hefty in the way the reviews come across than like the. I don't know, just like I think there is still like a heavy genre bias to a lot of Pitchfork work. You know, I don't know.
And like I'm a bit like I think my favorite critic, like in any sphere, is probably Fantano.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
but
he's
like,
good.
but like the thing about Fantano that at least is like, and this is going to be like a weird personal bias thing, but like, if I have not heard the album, if I don't have an interest in the album, I can't bring myself to watch a Fantano video, right? Like
I mean, yeah, but
that.
that's the thing that's nice, right? Is like you don't have to consume it all.
That's a valid point. That's a valid point. It's just like I feel like if I'm way more likely to like read an article about an album I've never heard of than watch a whole video. But like yeah, like what you just said is completely accurate. Like 100% true. I don't have to watch the whole thing. Uh
And I think there's a big difference between reading and skimming. I definitely skim articles on music that I have no interest in listening to. I sometimes might flip through a video, depending. But yeah, I usually sit down and engage with stuff like that if it's a project that I'm actually interested in.
yeah, if it's actually interested. And like what I really love about Fantano is like if there's a project that is in a genre I don't typically listen to, he's like a very good like like the Zach Bryan album. It's a country album. I don't listen to a lot of country, but I heard like, hey, like this is like people call it the Nirvana moment, where it's like bro country is just like this abomination, and like this is like bringing it back to its roots, like in the
Yeah,
style of like outlaw country. And I'm like, oh, I love outlaw country. It's not very popular, right? Like,
yeah,
all right, now let's. Do we want to just go and cover the singles? We have a lot.
yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna run down it all, and then we can pick apart which ones we really want to talk about. So the first one is we have 21 Savage and David. I believe that's how you say it. Call Me
Yeah, let's take it.
Revenge. We have
Hmm.
Lil Wayne and 2 Chains with Predha. Don't know what that means. Rick Ross and Meek Mill, Lyrical Easy. J Rock and Ab Soul, Lo-Fi. Danny Brown and the Alchemist, Tanter. Kevin Abstract, What Should I Do? Flo Milli, BGC, and Smino, Mr. Pinterest Freestyle. Jasper, which one of these are jumping out at you?
I'm gonna go with J Rock and Absol, just because I think J Rock is
He's
underappreciated.
he's very underappreciated. I gotta be honest with you.
Hmm.
When the whole no name thing was going on,
Yeah,
for a split second, like I was like, man, I sure hope I can still go back and listen to Money Trees. And then I forgot it was J Rock and not J Electronic.
yeah,
Because like
yeah.
not
That's
like
funny.
because like I do think they have similar sounding voices. Right?
Yeah, it's
Even
too
though
bad
like
because yeah,
they're
I
very
like J
different people. They're
Electronica's
not the
sound a lot.
same. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
not the same at all. But
yeah.
like
And
yeah.
then the other one is Smino, Mr. Pinterest Freestyle.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Like, Smino's little freestyle run that he does, like I love that he's constantly feeding the fans. You know, like that's something I do appreciate. Like, not everything has to be like a fully constructed piece.
Do you think the name for this was originated before or after the release of Utopia?
I have no idea. What, Mr.
Be-
Pinterest?
yeah,
I have
because I'm
no.
the human Pinterest. That became like a big thing recently, like that line.
I've
So
never heard that line before in my life.
it's on Schizo. He talks about being the
I
human
can't get through
Pinterest.
Schizo anymore.
No,
No, Schizo's very long. It's not a bad song. I don't think there's any bad songs on Utopia, besides K-pop. But it's just so
K-pop
long.
is it's a single, not a
Uh,
I don't know.
uh, like once again, I'm not saying it's like a bad song, but like
Here here it is.
it is a lyric driven Travis Scott song, and that tells you all
Yeah,
you need to know. You
he
know,
says
like
he says, seen the top 10 pen list. I don't even know how they could pin this, knowing that I'm the human Pinterest. Need true love. I know true love's like a friendship, but even the Titanic hadn't ended.
yeah, no, I think Smino has probably thought about Travis Scott single digit amount of times this year. Like
Yeah,
not zero. Utopia was a moment. Everyone fucked with Utopia. It's a genuinely very good album. But
sure. But maybe not that
almost
song. But
yeah,
yeah.
no, definitely not. For me, this is like a tough one because like there's two artists here I really, really love. Uh Danny Brown and the Alchemist. We found out this week that in November we're going to be getting Danny Brown's follow up to Triple X, Cortana, and or Curata. I can't say it. It's 40 in Italian.
I would say Cortana is
The
the
logo,
Halo
yeah.
protagonist.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like Curanta. Uh,
40, like yeah,
40. Yeah, it's like 40. It's 40 in Spanish, right?
yeah. 40.
XXX was about him turning 30,
Hmm.
and Quarenta is about him turning 40.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't heard this song yet. I kind of want to hold because Scaring the Hose is still in my top 5 for the year. So like I kind of like want to hold this like juice I have, and like I'm really high on Danny Brown right now. I've been revisiting his old stuff. I'm like I'm
Mhm.
just gonna hold this and like listen to the whole album. Uh, but him working with the Alchemist, give it to me. Give it to me now.
Yep.
Alchemist is a absolutely top S tier producer in my opinion. I think Danny Brown's like an S tier talent. This is perfect. And the other song on here that I'm really excited for is Kevin Abstract. Uh, Blanket, his next album, is
Hmm.
probably my other like must listen to before the end of the year album.
Like anticipated, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I was a huge fan of Brockhampton. I was a fan of his stuff. I didn't know him before Brockhampton, but like I'm a fan of the stuff he released from before Brockhampton. I really think this guy, like when we did our debate on who's the next Kanye, my pick was between West Side Gun and Kevin Abstract. And I low key like looking back, I definitely think Kevin Abstract probably was a better pick. Uh, but yeah, no. So those are the two I'm really excited for. But obviously, like the Lil Wayne 2 Chainz thing, I'm gonna listen to at least once. Like,
Yeah, of course.
gotta listen to that at least once.
Hmm.
Uh, and then Flo Millie's always fun. And then, as you said, J Rock and Absol, both artists I think are underrated, and you were definitely right to call out J Rock because
Who was it? I'm just looking at this list now for the Rick Ross and Meek Mill thing. Who was it? Who they were comparing themselves to? Was it Tupac and Biggie? Was that like the
no, it
thing
was
that they
Shaq
did?
and Kobe.
Jack and Kobe. That's what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. That I can
yeah,
appreciate more than
yeah,
Pac and Big. I was
yeah.
gonna say I don't think
Those were
that's
rivals. Like,
yeah. I was like I
yeah,
don't think that's a fair comparison either.
yeah, those were rivals. Like,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no. So that's like all the releases for this week. Middle brow week, I would say. And then we have some news, and not a whole lot of crazy shit, but here we go. This one makes me feel very old. Love Sosa is 11 years old. What?
I forgot about that, but we'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
remember
is.
where I was when I heard this song for the first
Yeah,
time,
I
and
remember where I
it
was when I heard this song for the first time. I was at a
still
mall
fresh. I'm
that
not
I
gonna
worked at.
lie.
Dude, yeah, like Chief Keef's sound has aged really well.
Mwah.
It doesn't hurt that an entire sector of the culture is just like refining that sound. You
Yeah,
know, uh, and that sound has gone international and changed so many times. Like it was, through that game of Delaphone, we've gotten Chief Keef all the way back to New York drill. Uh, I'm very excited for any big project he has coming out now, and I feel very old knowing that this is an 11-year-old song now.
yeah, yeah. Puts it in
Yeah,
perspective.
puts it a lot in perspective. Yeah, time doesn't exist. It is awful.
Yeah,
All
no,
right,
it's a cruel thing.
so we talk about Moon Man Comics.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah. So did you hear the song Cuddy did with Star Trek?
I haven't listened to the song yet, but I've seen
Oh, you
everything
have?
else.
Oh, I think it's actually a cut above some of the stuff he's released recently.
Hmm.
I like it more than Portia Topless. I like it more. It is very spacey, which very Cuddy, very Star Trek. It does not feel like a tie-in song. I don't think it's like an especially good Cuddy song. Like just as a big fan of his, I think he just
Sure.
I think like there are tiers and tiers and tiers of songs, even if you just want to start counting from like 2018 above it. But I think it's better than some of the more really recent stuff. So yeah, no, I heard the song. It's very good.
That's good. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, I don't know if you touched on it last week
yeah.
or
We
not,
talked about
but
we touched on the song. We didn't touch on the other stuff.
got it. Okay, yeah. So Cuddy is now a playable character in Fortnite again, technically for the first time, I guess. But
Yeah,
the Scots was a thing in Fortnite, so that was like a thing that happened. But it's like him in collaboration with Star Trek, where he is like the Star Trek captain, which I think is pretty fitting given the subject matter of a lot of the music or
yeah.
the style of the music. So there's that, and then Moonman Comics. This is exciting. There's going to be, I think it's a fully narrative driven comic series. Um, and I don't know, we don't know what the premise is yet or anything, but it's Cuddy's Moonman character in comic form. There's going to be an issue every month, I think, next year, and it's in collaboration with Image, who brought us East of West and
Savage
Saga, which are like
Savage
some of the
Dragon,
Savage Dragon, some of the
or was that Dark
biggest. Like,
Horse?
I actually don't know about that one. Let me look it up.
I think Savage Dragon was Dark Horse. But yeah, Saga. I've always been meaning to read Saga.
It's good. I enjoy
Yeah,
it a lot. East of
uh,
West is my favorite, though.
yeah,
It's like totally my thing.
yeah. Uh, yeah,
Uh,
no. So like, here's the thing. I am like a pull list kind of guy. Like I only up until like a few years ago did I stop going to comic book shops every Wednesday for New Comic Book Day.
mhm.
Uh, this like, here's my thing, man. Like when big artists from other mediums go to comic books,
Yeah,
there is a trend of just like not really giving a shit, like it feeling like
there's
a
like a dilution.
corporate, it feeling like a corporate spin-off and not
Yeah,
like someone going in because they love like they love the thing, right?
for
Like
sure.
I would say like the exception, like the good one is like when Kevin Smith off of like Clerks, and like when he directed like a bunch of stuff in the 90s, and then he got brought into comics in the 2000s, and he
Hmm.
wrote a bunch of great stuff. He wrote like one of my favorite Green Arrow runs, Quiver. And so that's the thing, right? Is that like I'm initially kind of skeptical, just because I'm skeptical of any big celebrity that comes into the comic book genre,
Hmm.
because it's like, one, like, who knows how much of you is actually in this? You know, is this a brand deal and this is just some writer who your name is above?
Hmm.
Is this something you wrote? Is this something you're going to put a lot of effort into? I'm curious to see what it is. The fact that it's with Image makes me feel better.
Me too.
Yeah, the fact that it's
Exactly.
with Image makes me feel better about that. Like, even if it is just like, Kid Cudi giving them a premise or Kid Cudi giving them a character, like, I believe that they will uh, build it out.
Yeah, I'm really hoping this is like I'm hoping we just get something that's like wild and beautiful and trippy and
Yeah,
basically like the print version of Love, Death and Robots. Like that's what I'm looking for out of this
yeah,
because there's a lot to like here, I think.
yeah. So like, I'm excited. It's just that I'm always skeptical when like big celebrities and big creatives come into comics, because a lot of time they don't give the medium the respect it deserves. You know,
Definitely.
yeah,
But you know what Kid Cudi project I think could have really lended itself to comics is Intergalactic.
yeah. I
I
think
think
I mean, on one hand, like I disagree, because I think the Intergalactic movie is actually very, very good.
me too.
So,
I agree.
so
But I
like
mean
I
like
just don't,
some things about it.
some aspect, yeah.
Like
Uh,
the Mr. Rager
yeah,
character. Like that could have had its own comic spin-off.
yeah. I can see that totally, and like I do agree that like I would definitely agree that like Kid Cudi is a artist who like I have more faith in than others, right?
For sure.
Like The
Yeah.
Weeknd did like a really bad comic book Starboy thing, which was very much like a corporate thing to push Starboy. It was a thing that was churned out by like D-level artists at Marvel. Like,
Yeah.
so the
Can,
fact that it's with
can,
Image and the fact that
mhm.
it's Kid Cudi has me like a little bit more optimistic than I usually would. But it's I am like, I'm not gonna hold my breath too much.
I was gonna say, can we tangent for a second on the weekend real quick?
Tangent
Because
really quick.
I feel like is it it's so funny, right? He's like number one, technically biggest streaming artist in the world, right? All this
Yeah.
stuff, accolades, whatever. Um, Blinding Lights has been played 100 billion times. Um, why is it that he can't seem to do anything aside from music that's like critically at that level? Because it seems like that's been a trend, like print media, and then also he's got his acting is like so like he was himself in Uncut Gems, that was whatever, but then this
I
this
thought he was
HBO
pretty. I
show.
liked him in Uncut Gems. Like
No, he was fine, he
I
was
know it
fine
was a
in that.
small role, but like those are
Yeah.
usually like the very like unforgiving roles, and like
Hmm.
playing yourself is a lot harder than it looks. Just as someone who has spent a lot of time like on narrative sets, so like
Yeah,
I liked him in Uncut Gems, but like yeah, no, the Idol was just like it crashed and burned.
right. So like I wonder if it's maybe he's just like his thing is just like he's about the music, or like I don't know what it might be. Maybe it's just like the stars haven't aligned where it'll come together. I don't know. It's interesting
Yeah,
to me.
no, I think a huge thing of it, and I think like this is true for like pretty much any artist that's like going into another medium at the height of their powers,
Hmm.
I think it's ego. And like
Yeah, I can see that.
if you read like the behind the scenes of the Idol and like how that went down, like I think that that's what it is. The fact of the matter is Abel learned how to. Well, he never sees this because he's probably my favorite artist working today. But like he learned how to like make an album, like make a successful like song and then album, like when he was, like a normal human being and capable of learning. And now he's, as you said, like one of the top streamed artists in the world. He's like he's like one of those people who could like is like a legitimate power center. Like that stuff's gonna do things to your ego, and that's what I think it is. Because I think ego is like the death of creativity and the death of the ability to do that stuff. Like you kind of have to understand. You have to at least have the humility to know what you don't know if you're going to get into stuff like that. And like I think the proof for the weekend specifically is just in the behind the scenes of the Idol. You know,
Yeah.
I think if the weekend had kept his ego in check and they kept the original creator of that show, I think it probably would have been really good. But that's just not what happened.
No.
Right. And the other thing is that like, I like the weekend for his music. So as long as that's still coming out like at the quality that I like, I'll still remain a fan.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. I mean, it's just interesting seeing that
you know,
kind of
and
divide artistically.
yeah. And like I also think like that's why like, I think that's why musicians tend to do best in like obfuscated endeavors,
Mhm.
fashion, the kind of thing where there's like layers of designers below you to like really temper like any kind of ego you walk in with. Uh, I think of like Beats by Dre, like tech, like because there's like teams of engineers and shit like that. Like, you know, there's no ego in that because then you won't ship a product,
Yeah.
like, or not no ego, but like, you're not gonna fuck up all your money.
Yeah, that's interesting. There are two more pieces of Cuddy news that I just
Yes.
want to throw out here. He's confirmed to be the headliner for Complex Con,
What is
which is
that?
pretty cool. Complex is an arts and culture magazine.
I
I
know
don't
what
know.
complex is, and I know what
Yes,
a
so
con is, but I could not imagine for the life of me what a complex con is.
it's been going on for actually a pretty long time. I think since
Like 10 years.
2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But basically, they do it in Long Beach, and they've also done it. They did one in Chicago in 2019. But basically, and I went. It was pretty cool. Basically, it's like a big con where people who are interested in the subjects that the magazine covers show up, and there's like cool vendors and exclusive experiences and like music performances and all kinds of stuff. So like Kid Cudi's going to be the headliner for that. There's usually like one or two musical guests. Lyrical Lemonade is also going to be there, just like they're going to have a
Yeah.
presence there and everything. And there's just like other like exclusive brands and things that are there with like design booths or art booths or merch booths and things like that. And it's basically like a place for people who are like interested in all the things that Complex covers to kind of come together and share that. So like you could be a sneaker collector, you could be into music, you could be into like New York street culture, you could be a skateboarder. Like any one of those would like fit that bill to some extent, and then you kind of like can learn about new
Yeah.
brands or learn about like cool new artists and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Because like, as I said, like I have not been to a ton of cons, but like tying very nicely into the previous thing. Every con I've been to is like a Comic Con,
Yeah.
right? And it's like I saw this shift happen like in front of me where like Comic Con went from like getting access to like creators and then transferring to like access to brands, and
Product. Yeah.
I feel like that is a demonstrably different experience and also in my opinion a dramatically inferior one. uh like this is something I'm like wrestling with right now in like my personal endeavors with like fiction,
Hmm.
because like it's having like very like there are outlets to get published now that like don't exist anymore because of this transition of cons as being like access to people as opposed to access to brands,
Right.
right? So it's like drying up like a lot of things. It just seems like complex con is just like I get it. Like it's a magazine, so it has to have like business partners who are brands and shit. But it just feels like cutting the bullshit and just being honest about it. Which like, hey, I can celebrate them for being honest about it. But like, it's just like, okay, this is just like the final stake in like the degradation of a thing I loved as a child. You
I
see?
don't know.
Do you see where I'm coming from here?
I see what you mean, but when I went in 2019, it I think walked the line perfectly between those two things because yeah, you had like exclusive releases and stuff where it's like, oh, this sneaker is only going to be at Complex Con. You can only get it here. This like vinyl figure, whatever. But at the same time, like they really did put out a platform for like a lot of local Chicago creatives to kind of be there and have booths and things, and that's actually I think one of the more pivotal and like significant experiences for me of like getting into the creative scene in Chicago was like that day because that's actually where I met one of my best friends in the space, Justin Mensinger, who
Yeah,
you met
yeah,
at Lyrical.
yeah. My
So,
girlfriend's a
so
massive fan and is saving up to buy some of his pieces,
yeah, so
which
like
I might
yeah,
want to talk to you about.
there
Like,
you go. Yeah, I met him in 2019 at Complex Con and he was there. He had a booth, he had pants, he had bags, he was like doing his thing, and we just hit it off like right away. Um, There's a couple others. Sheila Rashid, who's like a pretty famous Chicago artist. I wound up meeting her and her assistant, who like also do like some very nice cut and sew pieces.
yeah,
I actually still connected with her assistant, and we kind of go back and forth. But I think he's actually making his own clothing now. But it's just like it felt super cool to have a place where all these creators who are like trying to do something online suddenly have like basically the equivalent of like a weekend's worth of like digital or like physical storefront sort of, and you can just go and pick their brains and talk about their designs and their art and then like make something out of it. So I think in that way there's like a truly an authentic experience lying underneath all like the shine and the glamour of like the exclusive release that is like the rest of the con.
yeah. And like, look, like, okay, like, all fairness, like, yeah, that sounds dope and that sounds cool. It's just that, like, I remember, I don't remember a time because like I wasn't there physically, but like I remember like all the downstream effects of being able to get like stories in front of people, like editors and stuff,
Hmm.
and it's just like there was a time where that was the entirety of it. That was
For
what
sure, for
that
sure.
there that is what it was. So like I
Yeah.
don't see there to be a balance to be had. I see there as like an encroachment and a stalemate. Like and like look and like to me like that's like a thing about fashion, right? Is that like fashion is like intrinsically linked to commerce.
Yeah.
And like, listen, I would totally say like what Justin does is like art and cultural, and like not a it is not sullied by like the exchanging of money for it. I would 100% agree with that, but like it still feels to me like the degradation of something that was once very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair.
And like they're
I think
different.
the fact that it's
They're
called a con is part of that problem too. It's like
Yeah,
it's not really
100%,
that,
one hundred
but
percent. But it's
yeah,
like, what else was Complex Con gonna be? you know.
exactly.
And then
Yeah.
the other thing is that like you say Kid Cudi's going to be there, and it's Complex Con, and I'm like, is he performing? Is he giving
Yes,
speeches? Because I know he's given speeches. I've watched his TED Talk. It
the
was
TED Talk.
good, not great.
Yes, agreed.
Like,
100% agreed.
I've seen
Um,
worse TED Talks, but I've also seen way better. Like,
yeah. So
uh,
he is performing. He's performing like I think the Saturday, but also his brand, Members of the Rage, is going to be there, and that's another thing where it's like it's going to have a booth. This is going to be like one of the first times some of that stuff becomes publicly available. So I think again it's kind of that interesting intersection of like yeah there's a product and it's commercial and it's for sale, but it's also like a creative outlet that he as an artist is able to kind of flex in, I guess, or like put his work into. So there's like yeah, there's just like it's multifaceted. I think is like what I'm trying to say. So I'm interested to see how it turns out. This one's in Long Beach, so like I probably won't go, but I was thinking about it just because
yeah,
it's a weekend and like why not? But we'll
yeah.
see.
My thing is that like, okay, so like there's a con in Salt Lake City,
Hmm.
for like it's an author I really like, and like he has
Hmm.
like this entire like universe of books.
Is it Wheel of Time?
No, it's not Wheel of Time. This is the Cosmere. Stormlight
Ah, okay.
Archive, Mistborn, Elantris.
Yeah,
Um,
I know Mistborn. Yeah.
yeah, Mistborn's fantastic. And it's like this is like a I've read all of his books multiple times. It's if there was an example of like a con that like could get me to travel, it's this one. No, couldn't do it. Like,
Gotcha.
you
Yeah.
know, like, but yeah, that's interesting. So real quick before we get to our main topic, we saw Thundercat last week without you.
I know.
Yeah,
I was annoyed because I was the one who was like, "Hey guys, let's go to Thundercat,"
yeah,
and then it
you were.
turns out
And
my Paris trip fell right on that week.
I mean, like, I think it's uncontroversial to say that we would all be rather be in Paris, except me. I think Europe is the birthplace of all evil. But like, it it was fun. It was interesting, and it was a very different kind of concert, right? Like, it was. You know, the band that I really want to compare it to really badly is Fish.
Oh shit. Okay, I already know where this is
Yeah,
going.
because like it was a lot of noodling. It was a lot of noodling. Okay, let's start because like we were at the Salt Shed. You and me have been to the Salt Shed. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
for Run the Jewels. This was
And
way
then
more packed. Uh,
yeah.
I mean, like it was kind of like the same. By the end of the night, it was like the same crowd as Run the Jewels.
Hmm.
It was a 2 hour long set.
God
Uh,
damn.
the DJ before was the best DJ set I've ever seen in my life. He was incredible.
Was he somebody known or was he just some guy?
We found him, like we found who
Uh-huh.
he was because he
Yeah.
was. Once again, I really enjoyed seeing Thundercat. The DJ was
Yeah.
better. Like,
Damn. Holy shit.
yeah, it was like like he was mixing up dance music. He was mixing up. He did this amazing like house remix of SZA's "Ghost in the Machine."
Oh god, that sounds insane.
And he played the whole song. Like it wasn't just like he played like a verse of it. He played the whole
and
song
then cuts it. Yeah.
and then
yeah.
cuts it. Right? Like it was a fantastic DJ performance. And then Thundercat comes on, and the thing is that there were just like two very different tones. Right? There was him doing like his very very tightly constructed songs from the albums because like I'm not a huge Thundercat fan, but I've heard his entire discography.
Yeah, I'm in the
know,
same
because
boat.
like I've been following him since To Pimp a Butterfly, so like I've been a fan for a while.
Mhm.
And like his stuff is like very tight. Like the music he releases on the albums, that was not the vibe for a lot of it. So like I would say probably less than half, more than a quarter of uh of the music was like tightly performed like the song from the album, and the
Yeah.
rest of it was like noodling and solos, and some of it was really cool, some of it was very sick, and he had excellent musicians up there, and it was something I'm happy I experienced because like I would never go see Fish,
Yeah.
right? Because like I'm not into like that style of rock music. I'm not into like the Dave Matthews Band style of rock music. I don't judge it. I think there's way worse shit out there, but like I'm happy I was able to see it in a context that I was more likely to enjoy it. But I think that kind of performance just typically is not for me.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing is that he gave a lot of speeches.
Really?
He spent a lot of time talking, and he talked about all the different times he went to Japan, and like he didn't say anything interesting about it. Right. Like that was Rachel's big problem about it is that like he just keeps bringing it up and not saying anything. Right.
It sounds like he was just really high the whole time.
No, because when you're high, you'll accidentally say something interesting, right?
Ah, fair.
It wasn't
fair,
as
fair.
bad as when I saw Kanye on the Yeezus tour, and he just said, like, we should never have let Jordan play for the Wizards for 20 minutes.
That's
It
so
wasn't-
funny though.
Yeah.
Come on, that's memorable at least.
It's better than the speeches he's giving nowadays, but like,
Protect his legacy. I kind of agree with that
Yeah.
actually. Keep Mike off the Wizards.
yeah, I know. Kanye was right, but he didn't need to say it. It's not like he went
Why,
on 20
why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
And it's not like he went on a 20-minute rant about it. He just said that sentence over and over again for 20
Yeah.
minutes.
Right.
But yeah, so it was a fun experience. It was an interesting experience, but it was just one. It's a style of performance that I'm not super into.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right now, he did go with Purvis, and he had some thoughts. So I'm going to read them really quick. So
Boy.
overall points, he's like, seeing Thundercat has encouraged me to go experience concerts with artists that specialize in a musical instrument, especially for artists that I do not consume often. Boy, I'm gonna have to copy edit his stuff. The mixture of comfort coming from knowing the name of the artist and uneasiness developed from not knowing what to expect was a nice way to appreciate the artist and their discography. which I agree with. You know, I think I'm probably a little bit more familiar with Thundercat than him. And like the other thing is that because I had that familiarity, it's like I had expectations like I'm gonna hear some songs, you know, right? Like I really wanted to hear the song "Funny Thing," you know, which is like one of his bigger hits. I know it's not his biggest hit, but it's like one of his bigger hits. And it's a song that's like special to me. Like me and Rachel used to listen to it all the time, like when we were first dating. And he just
Hmm.
didn't play it. Like he just did not play most of his songs. He spent most of the time soloing.
Oh,
Uh, some of the okay. So going back to what Purvis said, some of the highlights for me: finally being able to experience the Salt Shed. Damn, it quickly moved up to a top 3 venue for me in Chicago. Uh, the opening DJ was by far the best DJ set I've seen in my life, and it was by miles. I will be singing "Melodies from Heaven" by Kirk Franklin at Brandon's wedding for Rachel. Yeah, so they played. They DJ did a drop gospel music, and
mhm.
Purvis and Rachel knew every word, and no one else in the crowd did.
That's so funny. I'm guessing it was a really white crowd still.
No,
Like,
it was like a pretty even crowd, but like no one
okay,
around us, I should say.
right,
Right,
fair.
it was a much more mixed crowd than Run the Jewels. I'll say that. And Thundercat is unapologetically nerdy, which is true. Like
Yeah,
he did a 7-minute prog rock version of the Mortal Kombat theme song.
of course he did.
Yeah,
Of course.
which was awesome. That was
Why
like
play your discography while you could noodle?
yeah, and then like some of the lowlights, some of the songs or solos just went on a bit long, and that's my thing. Is like I just think they went on a bit long. You know, I would say this like if you can put like when we went to Riot Fest, right? You have like Turnstile, like a tight 45 minute where they play an album and some Lucy's.
Hold on.
What's up?
You said that you wanted to see Funny Thing, right?
Yeah,
He did play Funny Thing. I'm looking at the set list for it.
I didn't hear it.
It was towards the very end. He played Tokyo, Funny Thing, and Them Changes as like the last
He
three, and
played
then he
them
did the.
changes, but I don't think he. I think that might be a mistake. He didn't play Funny Thing.
Maybe he like did like a little interlude into it or something. One of the things I want to see is he did play Black Gold, which is
Yeah,
my favorite Thundercat
yeah,
song.
he did play
But
Black Gold. Yeah, he
I
did
love
play
that
Black
song
Gold. He didn't do like none of his music. It's just he spent so much time soloing,
for
right?
sure.
And the
Yeah,
other
for
thing is
two
that
hours,
like,
it's
and the
yeah.
other thing is that like, the band was mixed well,
Hmm.
and when a band's mixed well, you can't hear the bass all that well. So
Yep.
like, I could have I think if there was ever an artist where you can put the bass a little higher, it's Thundercat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a meme that sums up how it sounds like this went, which is basically it's a picture of Thundercat and it just says bass skills of a transformer, songwriting skills of a 5-year-old. And like, I don't know. I think 2 hours of noodling kind of confirms bass skills of a transformer.
Yeah,
And songwriting skills, I don't know. I
yeah.
mean, I don't know if he's that.
Well, no, I think his songwriting skills are like really top notch. It's just like that's just what not what the performance is. And like yeah, he has
What
like
it
a
was about. Yeah.
yeah, he just like and he has like a more of a jazz background, which is also going to lead into that.
Yep.
You know, so it was a really memorable experience. And like, listen, if I was going to experience this type of music, this kind of performance, I wouldn't. I'm happy it was Thundercat.
Yeah.
So
Now
that's
I'm gonna have to see him some other time because I missed it, but eventually.
yeah. All right, Jasper, did you do anything music related in Paris?
Mm, I heard a lot of French rap as people drove by me,
That
so there's that.
sounds like a hate crime.
Pretty much, yeah. French and rap music.
Just
I'm
shooting
about
each
to
other
say
there.
I'm about to say some shit real unpopular for some people, but like them bitches don't go together. Like French is too to me, the French language is much too like soft and floaty, I guess was the way I would describe it, to be as intense as a lot of rap music requires. And oil on water for me just like doesn't do it. But
I agree. I also feel like I I, I do feel it's kind of odd when people because I'm definitely into music from other cultures
yeah,
or at least music and languages I don't understand because like just being a Latino person that doesn't speak Spanish, that's a lot of what I've listened to in my life.
right.
Um, but it is like super weird to me when people who don't speak a language listen to hip hop specifically in other languages because like to me I feel like the lyricism in hip hop is like the thing it's built on,
Yeah.
right? Like if you don't like if lyrics aren't like it's like the equivalent of the guitar or like the 4x4 drum beat, you know. And it's like if you just don't understand what they're saying, like what's going on, like what are we doing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
at
like
that point, the voice just becomes like another instrument, and it's how well does it fit with the instrumentation that exists. And
yeah,
for
and
me,
it's just
like, yeah, I would take Russian or Polish rap over French rap just based on the way it sounds.
I also can't get over the cultural appropriation of it. I'm sorry, like it's just
Well,
like
I mean, you've got people who are like Algerian
yeah,
and like there are a lot of black French
sure,
people.
but
Like
like not
that's a
so much.
thing.
Yes, the Russian thing is what triggered me because I'm familiar with Russian hip hop,
Yeah.
and there's not a lot.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I
like
can confirm.
that.
Um, I, I don't. It's interesting though, right? Because like you think about it, Russians kind of invented what was it like? I saw a thing about like Russian authors inventing sorrow as like a thing
Yeah.
to sell more books. And it's like, what is rap if not complaining about your sorrows or your problems just in a different cadence and a different form? And it's like, well, hey, that seems like a natural progression for them, I guess. Who
Yeah, I
knows?
just if I want that, I'll read Dostoevsky. There's a reason I haven't since
Facts.
college. Like,
Facts.
oh my god. All right. So, do you want to get to our main topic of the night? We're going to be talking a genre crossovers.
Oh yeah.
All right. I have it listed from most common to most eclectic, in my opinion. But first, let's just talk about the idea. And I feel like when we talk about genre crossovers, it feels like hip hop it happens a lot more often. And for me, I think of it as just like kind of a flexibility of the genre, right? Because it is so sample based, it is so chopped and screwed based, it is so like finding sounds. You
Hmm.
know, it feels like you can kind of just like make hip hop out of anything, right?
Yeah.
So that naturally, like I feel like that naturally leads to like just pulling in more and more influence. You know, uh, but yeah, like, is there another feeling you have on that?
I mean, it's like, all right, yeah, my hot take is that noise rock is actually the most mixable, the most mixable genre of music. No,
Yeah. It's
yeah, I
like
agree.
math rock only. If it's not in 9/11, like,
Hey, yo, if it's not in 17:4.
yeah, I love how my brain just went like think of two numbers. It's like,
Of course it did.
oh my god. So yeah, I also think like there is a cultural reason for that in that like we look at all the genres we have listed and like most of these have their roots in like Black American culture,
Yeah.
and I think like that's like a huge part of it. One of the crossovers we're talking about is like rock, and it seems like rock mostly comes from like most good rock crossovers with rap comes from people of color and people who are like authentically in the hip hop sphere choosing to go with a band as opposed to the other way around. You know, I think the only real exception to that, I think, and I will defend this, is Limp Bizkit. Like, I think that was probably as close to good poser rock we'll ever get.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your definition is, because like I can definitely think of singles that transcend and do it well.
Yeah. Well,
Like
why don't we talk about that?
Danger Mouse and Jay-Z. I just want to bring it up like right off the
Well,
bat.
do you consider? Well, what do you mean by that? Because like I think Danger Mouse has like a legacy within hip hop. Like, yes, he
Yeah.
also has like rock like background too, but like that guy was working with MF Doom when he was like for Adult Swim.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as like a genre crossover, and I think that that's something I want to talk about before we could jump into this.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I just mean like I think it's Danger Mouse who did it. It's like a Beatles Jay-Z crossover.
Yeah, the Gray album.
The Gray Album. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I completely forgot what it's called, but I still see that as a genre crossover based on like the elements that go into it musically.
Yeah, I see that like
Yeah.
as a genre crossover for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's like almost in its own lane though, like because I think it's the what's it called? Like when you take two songs specifically and just like mush them together,
Mashup. It's a
mash them.
mashup. It's not a really
Yeah,
crossover.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's more of
Okay.
a like, and I feel like mashup is like its own genre to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So like while I agree, yeah, I think like there's room in this conversation of genre crossovers for things like the Gray album, totally.
And
But
LPJZ, for example, like stuff
yeah,
like that.
LBJZ. But I think like maybe something that's a little bit more close to a genre crossover would maybe be something like Collision Course.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know and I think like this is something I want to talk about to just to kind of like get a temperature set for this conversation is like what is the difference between like art that mixes genres and artists that cross genres, right? Like to
Mm,
me, Awaken My Love is not a cross genre album. It is
I agree.
just funk, right?
I agree.
I think it's
Yeah.
incredible. I think it's satiated me for Childish Gambino, but it's just not hip hop. It's not a crossover. It is not a crossover album by virtue of Childish Gambino being a hip hop artist predominantly.
Yeah.
And then you have stuff, uh, art that mixes genre. And I'm trying to think of like a very quick example of that. I think maybe like the most ubiquitous one would be like early Drake, that like just very flawlessly mixed hip hop and R&B together, which like has kind of always happened, and we'll talk about that. But like that was really the moment where it was like, oh, like one artist can kind of cover both of these things.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? Because I think this truly does become just like I think of all the topics we talked about on this show, I think this might be the most subjective one
What it,
because
yeah,
I think there's just like so many layers to like what elements of an artist are actually like crossing over or are being um used or displayed in another context because I was thinking about like think about one thing that came to mind for me is like the difference between and this is like a kind of silly example but Playboy Cardi live versus a studio
no, I
version
think this
of
is
like
actually an excellent. I think this is an excellent point to bring up.
yeah because like if you listen just to the record let's say that you listen to a whole lot of red right like his vocal style is emulates I guess I don't even know if emulates is the right word but it is reminiscent of like certain hardcore or
Metalcore.
metal
I
or
that
yeah sorry
that was
metalcore yeah
yeah. Metalcore is the subgenre that I pulled out from listening to a whole lot of Red and seeing them live.
right and then but like you have the songs that definitely feel more like trap with like metalcore elements but then when you see him live he
It
actually
feels
has
just
a
straight up like
full-on guitarist
yeah,
yeah so it's like there's like levels to how much artists are like capturing just the aesthetic and what weaving it in to make it like a crossover I guess
yeah.
versus actually drawing musically from it.
Yeah, that is an absolutely great point. And like an artist I wanted to bring up like that is Denzel Curry, right? Because
Yeah,
I've always said
yeah.
that like Denzel Curry is a great point when someone listens to rock music to get into hip hop,
Mhm.
right? Because he does borrow, especially on Taboo, he borrowed a lot of rock aesthetics. But
Yeah.
it's like important to note that like Denzel Curry does not have any rock sounds at all, like even way less than Playboy Cardi,
Hmm.
except for maybe a song or two on Taboo. Um, and yeah, I think that's a huge difference between like, are they just borrowing the aesthetics of another genre? Are
Yeah.
they truly mixing the genres? Uh, are they just doing that other genre? Are they crossing genre as an artist and not as the art? So I think like what I'm trying to look for is like the art that crosses genre, right?
Yeah.
And I have it like organized here, but we don't have to be so linear. And like because I want to skip ahead a little bit. And I think like the art, like a great example, I think that is like art that truly blends genres is To Pimp a Butterfly, right? Like that deep, rich funk instrumentation that goes through the entire album, right? It Most of that stuff is not like DAW chopped and sampled. It's like live performance, right? But you
Hmm.
listen to the final product, and it is unequivocally hip hop. You would not. I don't think anyone would call that a funk album ever.
No.
But the elements of there are there in earnest. Like the Isley Brothers are on that album.
Hmm.
Thundercat is on that album. Uh, so I think that's like to me is like a gold standard of like genre crossover because like you have the depth and the rich funk sounds, but you still have like that element of hip hop or that it's still like arranged in a hip hop way. So to me, that's like what I'm looking for. I think that's like the thing I'm trying to clue in on. Like, what are these songs, right? That blend.
Yeah. I mean, the other person who comes to mind for me is Kid Cudi. I think there's,
Elaborate on
it,
that.
I think there's enough of his discography that really wears its influences on its sleeve and does so in a way that takes the musicality of a genre like punk or or just rock, and then really pairs it with Cuddy's original kind of vocal style in a way where you are effectively getting the vocalization from one genre and the instrumentation from another. And for me, that I would qualify as like a pretty significant crossover. And I think Kendrick's is in a vein the same way, but it's integrated in a different style. I think that Cuddy's is a lot more loose in the way it kind of
Yeah, it feels like Cuddy is more
presses
like
it
taking
together.
techniques from other genres and like putting them there. Because like even the songs that have like MGMT and Rat-a-tat, like I would still like think, no, this is just hip hop. Like like I wouldn't
Yeah,
call
well,
those
I'm thinking of like,
genre.
yeah, I'm thinking more of like Wizard specifically
I
when
think
I bring
and
this
like
up.
I think Wizard's an incredible album. I think Wizard is just straight up a rock album. I think it's closer to like Awaken My Love
True. I
than
guess I'm trying to think about like his delivery. Does he actually?
you know. I think Passion Pain probably has more of the most genre switch ups. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Also,
maybe
Man on the Moon too. Erase Me. I mean, stuff like that.
Erase Me. I would say is a I think as a song, Erase Me is extremely genre mixed, right? It is
Yeah.
very much like a hip hop song in the form of a rock song, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say
And then
Erase Me 100% counts.
jumping forward in their careers a bit, Cuddy and Kanye, Ghost Town and Ghost Town Part 2.
See, people have said that. Like, you're not the first person to tell me that, but I just think that's a very big stretch, right? Like, I don't like. I think Kids See Ghost is
Mhm.
a. I definitely think you can argue that it's like a psychedelic album and it's not really hip hop. But like, I think like I don't know if it's like a fully rock album to me, you know. And to me, psychedelic has always been like an adjective genre, right? Unless you're Brian Eno, like no one is making like purely psychedelic. It's psychedelic rock, it's psychedelic rap, it's psychedelic dance music.
Yeah,
You
of
know what I
course.
mean? Like, uh,
It's yeah. I guess it's tough for me because then the difference becomes, well, it's not technically a hip hop album, but it's a rap album, right? Because it's like it's the vocal delivery that qualifies it that way, at least for me. And for me, I have a hard time separating the elements of hip hop and rap, like hip hop being just the musicality and rap being, say, like the vocal styling,
yeah.
I
To me,
guess.
rap is
But
just like to me, rap's the technique.
yeah, yeah,
Rapping is the technique. Like Zach De La Rocha raps,
yeah,
but Rage Against the Machine is metal. You know what I mean? Like versus
yeah,
like Kid Cudi sings, but Man on the Moon is hip hop. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, okay. So I think the most common one is probably R&B because it's just like the the oldest one. And I think the thing that we were able to see in our lifetimes is those genres actually fully mix. Because I think for a long time there was just this idea that like because I think hip hop has like such a heavy emphasis on lyricism, especially in its early days, the '80s, the '90s, right?
Hmm.
When people wanted to start putting hooks on it, I don't think it was seen as taboo to go ahead and get an R&B singer to do the hooks as long as you were writing your own verses. And I
Yeah.
think that was just a marriage made in heaven because let's keep it real, most R&B singers are way better on hooks than most of the rap artists, you know? Like not exclusively, and you could definitely have like rapped hooks 100%. But like if you want to have something, especially if you're trying to appeal to like certain demographics, women, you know, like yeah, like the neighbor's hook is rapped and it goes hard, but I don't know if it
I
plays in the club.
I have a take that I think you may dislike or really agree with. I don't think
Okay.
there's any middle ground.
Okay, I'm getting ready.
I think a powerful example of crossover, technically, based on what we just said, Red Hot Chili Peppers give it away.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that.
Right? I
I
mean,
don't hate
like
that.
technically,
Yeah, I
he
don't
is
hate that.
technically rapping, I
He
guess.
is rapping 100%. Like yeah, no, I'll give you that. I don't hate that at all. I think the thing is that yeah, like that's the thing, right? Is that like in order for it to be hip hop, it has to be cultural to an extent,
Yeah.
right? It has to exist within hip hop culture, right? Like there's an artist my girlfriend really likes, and I like her a lot too. I think she's quite talented. and like she raps. Her name's Ash Nico. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
Yes,
You might
I'm
have
very.
because
Katie is very into Ash Nico.
that
Yeah,
makes a ton of sense.
checks out, right? I mean,
Yeah,
stereotypes.
there we go. Uh, but like she raps for sure, and she's good. But like she doesn't
Yeah,
participate in hip hop culture, right?
yeah.
So like I would not exclude her from the conversation, but I think there's a reason why she just doesn't appear in it either. You
hmm
know,
I think Gorillas kind of falls in that vein, to be
Gorillas
honest.
Gorillas definitely does, and I would definitely agree with that. But I think Gorillas does it the most authentic way, and that is to just like very
Feature people
similarly
or
to what
like,
we just
yeah.
talked about with R&B and hip hop. It's like David
hmm
Albarn just like wanting to incorporate these elements and going to the source and not doing it himself, which would have been goofy. But like,
God, can you imagine?
I would shoot myself if I ever hear
That's
David
like if
Albarn
that's like if
rapping.
Rivers Cuomo started rapping.
There's a Weezer song that has a Lil Wayne feature, and you know what? It's a guilty pleasure song of mine.
Well, Weezer did that cover album, right? Imagine if they
Oh my
covered
god!
like
Imagine if
"All
they did.
Right" by Kendrick.
Imagine if they did 6 foot 7 foot. That's what I would want to see.
Weezer covering anything by Kevin Gates.
They're doing really, really like. What do you mean Magnolia's on the Weezer album?
In New York, they Millie Rock. What can I say?
But yeah, no, that's yeah, no, I would definitely say that I would say the Gorillas fall very firmly in there, and I would say they are some of the best. Like, and I think that's probably that's probably the exception where you see a lot of hip hop artists like working in the rock sphere. You know, everyone from like Deltron to Popcan. I think Pusha has been on some Gorilla songs. I'm not sure.
Push. That sounds right, but I don't
I don't know
remember.
for sure. Yeah, but yeah, uh, yeah, no, definitely. And I so my big one is just like I think like R&B is probably the most common one. I think pop is also probably the most common one, but like pop is like so hard to define.
Pop is tough. We gotta talk about this.
Yeah, like pop is tough because, and this is an idea that I really love, and I will not stop until people credit us with it. And it's
Let's
the
hear it.
idea that pop is simultaneously a genre and a form, right?
Yeah.
Like pop has like its own set of tropes and aesthetics and everything. You know, put on a Carly Rae Jepsen album. You know, put on a 1989 by Taylor Swift. Like that's a pop album. It has its own collection of like sounds and tropes, the same way as any other genre. But pop is also a form because pop as a genre was created in tandem with like the music industry. Like it is a genre that is inextricably connected to like radio play specifically in a way
Yeah.
that no other genre is, right? So you have someone like the Migos, I would say is like probably the greatest example, who take all of the elements we like from hip hop and they produce it in a way that is just very digestible within like this pop like water cycle kind of thing that happens on the radio, right? They want 3-minute songs with no bridges and strong choruses, right? And it really doesn't matter. The aesthetics don't really matter. It's just like those are the aesthetics that rise. You know, the aesthetics of someone like a Olivia Rodrigo rise to the top when you're making that kind of music. But it doesn't have to be that way, and we all know that.
I have another controversial
Here we go.
take that I think is very accurate, but it's one of those Eric Andre, why would you say something so controversial yet so brave moments? I think the greatest, and by greatest I mean most successful pop rap song of all time, based on like all the criteria that we have available here, is "Dark Horse" by Katy Perry.
See, I don't think that counts as pop rap. That is a pop song with a rap verse, and I would say
Right, but then
that
what else would you call it if it's not? Because pop rap
I
is
would
the
call
thing
that a
that
pop song
describes that thing. Yeah, I guess that's
because
fair.
it's a
I
Katy Perry song, right? Like I think like
Yeah,
because I think because like once again, rap's not a genre, rap's a technique,
right,
and the genre
sure.
is hip hop, and there's nothing like Dark Horse is a good song,
No,
but
there's nothing
like
hip hop about
but
it.
there's
Yeah.
nothing hip hop about it, right?
Which is funny
Uh,
because there's actually a version of it that they started playing later on in the life cycle of that song where they
yeah,
completely cut the verse entirely, the
yeah,
Juicy J verse entirely, and it's just her for like the
yeah,
minute and a
yeah, one
half
hundred
that
percent,
it
yeah. That
is. Yeah.
uh, like I think something. I think like a closer one, and this might be a hot take, is
Let's
maybe
go.
something like Royals by Lord, which is just a pop song, but it was assembled with like the snap tracks you find in hip hop. It was assembled in a DAW, right? Like
I don't hate it.
I think that is probably a closer example to a hip hop pop crossover. And I also
Yeah.
think like, you just have your artists, whether that's someone like a Little Dirk, whether that's someone like Amigos, who just well, Pop Smoke is another one I think is like this. Like just like the way they choose to the all the creative pressures that lead to them creating the music that they make
Hmm.
also make it a good fit for these pop environments. Right. It makes it a good fit for Spotify playlists. It makes it a good fit for Power 92. Right. So like it fits that form of pop really
Hmm.
well. If it was a widget on a factory and it was being expected by like quality assurance, like it would pass, but it's just not made the same way. You could probably say a very similar thing for a lot of like the Ramones. It's probably another great example where it's like that is not pop at all, but just like all the creative pressures on the Ramones that led to the music they make also made it songs that play on the radio really well.
Yeah. I think there's one album that is maybe the most difficult to quantify in all of this that also checks that pop box,
Yeah.
and I think that's Igor.
No, I think Igor is 100% pop. I think that is on the hip hop side, but I think that is like 100% an album that is pulling in like active pop influences. I think that's a great take, but I think it's a borderline obvious one.
No, I agree, but what I mean is like we know it's in the pop space, but what I'm saying is like I think that of all the projects we've talked about so far, it is the one that blends hip hop the most seamlessly with all of the above. Because I just looked it up just because I felt like cheating, and the genres that it's classified under are hip hop, funk, contemporary R&B, neo soul,
Is
electronic
this
music,
is this
and alternative
Wikipedia?
R&B. Yeah,
Okay, well, they're just incentivized to like put it to as many pages as possible. So I think that's a bit of a stretch. Like I would not
uh,
say it's a funk album in any capacity. Just because it
I,
has like some intricate bass lines does not make it a funk album.
I mean it borrows elements. I don't think it's classified as that, but
Sure,
yeah,
but if it borrows element, like I think there's a difference between like I think it's like an authentic. I think it's an authentically pop album, right? And if you listen to Tyler, he talks about that, right?
yeah,
Like
no,
I,
it's
I
true.
100% agree with that take. Like I think Igor is 100% a pop album,
Hmm.
but like I don't know. I think all those other things, I think they're stretches, uh, in my opinion.
I
Uh,
think I think alternative R&B qualifies.
not fully,
No,
like, uh, and like the thing about alternative R and B, that's a tough nut to crack. Like we're gonna, have to,
yeah, because
I look
it's listed as
for,
contemporary and alternative, like
yeah,
both. I'm like,
yeah, those
what?
are yeah. Like first off, those are opposites. Second
Yeah,
off, like, you can't be Daniel Caesar and Brett Faiyaz, like,
yeah, facts.
but yeah, I think if we're gonna talk about hot takes, I think my biggest hot take is that I think the best genre to mix with hip hop is funk.
Yeah,
Whether we're talking about like the early like Tribe Called Quest kind of sounds, which is also very heavily with jazz. I didn't put jazz on here because I don't. I'm just not into jazz. Maybe when I'm 40. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's interesting.
it's
Um,
interesting. It's like it's an interesting thing to watch. I get the appeal, and I'm just not into jazz.
I was gonna say, don't tell our boy Shaw Calhoun that.
I know, dude. I'm sorry, Shaw. I'm sorry, Shaw. I just don't listen to a lot of jazz. Like I have a lot of admiration for it, and I respect its significance in music history. But like, I gotta hear bars, man. I'm trying to get through the day. Like,
Sounds like someone hasn't listened to Beyond the Sea by Bobby Darin enough times.
I'm Italian. I've heard it 1,000 times more than you. Like,
Debatable. I have played Bioshock.
I have played Bioshock and was raised Italian. I
No, I know, I know.
checkmate. I've played every Bioshock,
Oh,
even the bad one, too. Like,
yeah, a game that is good by pretty much any other studio standards.
I think it misses the point. Like,
Yeah, I bet.
yeah. Love Infinite though. I know that's like getting to be a hot take. No, Infinite's great. Like,
Infinite could have been a lot more than it is, but I think it's a good game. Anyway,
we'll talk about this later. Like,
yes,
all right.
yes.
So this one I want to talk to you about because this is probably a much closer for you than me, and that's dance music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we see with this, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of obvious crossover between hip hop and dance music, but it does seem to be like post hoc, right?
Yeah.
Where it's more like DJs who are artists in and of themselves, like mixing hip hop and dance music like live, and then that becomes, that's the music now, right?
Yeah, it's difficult, I think, because when you have a genre that is dance is, I think, really tough because I don't think you could classify any single vocal styling as like dance styling
Yeah, no,
for
it's purely a musical
music.
thing. It is
Right.
purely musical.
And that's the thing, right? Is like how do you carry over a musical style and blend it with another musical style that also is like competing for space, I guess, right? And
Yeah.
the only example of this that I can really think of that works in recent memory, at least of like recent releases, goes back to Utopia, Del Resto, where it's like Beyonce and
I
Travis
don't
doing
even
their
think
thing.
I don't even think that's dance music at all. Like I like that song a lot. Like that's a
The
good
the,
song.
the layout of it, I think, it is as close as you're gonna get to like hip hop transposing
Yeah.
dance.
The thing
But
is that
I
like
don't know.
I think we should avoid the temptation to only name good albums because like
You
I think
right?
yeah like like because like the most obvious like hip dance one is like last year's Drake travesty. Honestly, never mind.
Yeah,
And
which I
yeah,
don't
which
know.
we rather not talk about. But
I
it
probably
is
couldn't name a track off of it at this point if I wanted to.
yes, and it's like not like I've seen it live where it plays way better, and like I've
Yeah,
revisited it, and it's not that good, right? You're
yeah,
not losing any sleep. However, despite it being bad, does not mean it is not authentically, house dance music. You know what I mean?
right, yeah.
Uh, well, give me one. Ordering pasta.
Good
Uh,
job.
yeah,
UK grime
yeah.
or
Okay, so
grime and UK rap. Let's talk about that.
yeah, because here's the thing, like the same way that like the birth of a lot of like American hip hop started in the '70s in New York with like chopping up break beats and shit, right? Like a lot of UK grime has a lot of ties to like electric music. Uh, a lot of the if you especially if you listen to like 2012 era like Skepta,
Hmm.
right? Which like I wish Purvis was here because like I'm not the biggest London hip hop listener, right? I just can't get over the Peaky Blinders voice over a beat. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I feel
Uh,
like certain artists I can do and certain ones I really can't, and it's a fine line. Like Skepta, I can do. There's Skepta songs that I actually really like. Like
yeah,
I I
I like
I I,
Skepta.
I, I mentioned "Peace of Mind" a while back as like one of my recommendations. I like that song a lot, and like some of the stuff in that vein. But I'm sorry, like the stuff that's popular now, like I can't do Central C. I just can't. I can't. It's too
Yeah,
much.
I
It's
can't.
like, and Dave, I don't know. I'm on the fence with Dave, and I'm also like on the fence with Stormzy, but I like a
I
lot of
like
his like
Stormzy. I don't love Stormzy. Is the thing.
right. That's how I feel about it. It's like I can't get like into it, you know?
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that. I completely agree with that. But my thing is that I think that there is like an intrinsic connection to dance music in that sphere that there
Yeah,
just isn't in, even if it like at the end of the day it doesn't end up actually being a genre crossover, right? Like I feel like there is
yeah.
like a connection there. And the
Hmm.
other thing is that like do you think this is something that could grow in popularity? Because I mean, with the exception of this year, hip hop has done nothing but grow in popularity ever since its inception, right?
Yeah,
And I 100%, and this is a theory. This is not like a fact. Uh, I 100% think that the lull in this year has to do with everyone releasing their pandemic albums last year.
yeah.
Um, that's just throwing the whole loop out of the way. Um, but like, do we think that this could grow in popularity? Like, as because dance music is also growing in popularity.
I think so, but I think the problem with something like that is that I think dance music in most forms, just like how it doesn't have a unique vocal style of its own, it's also very like context specific, right? Where it's like where are you likely to hear dance music? And
Yeah,
it ties
and like
back to
that's
what you said
another
about
thing.
Honestly Nevermind, where it's like, Honestly Nevermind, listening to it at home as an audio file is not the way to experience that album.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah,
it's
no, you're
seeing it
100% right
perform.
on that. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's part of why like I think that Discovery is a much more listenable album than Homework, because Homework
yeah,
is very clearly like for the club.
yeah.
Like those are
That's a
club
very good
songs.
out. Yeah, uh, that's a very good example. 100%.
Yeah, so I think there's a discrepancy there. I think if you're gonna incorporate dance music into hip hop or like fuse the two, there has to be something about it that makes it listenable in a context outside of that particular style of venue. Otherwise, you're just ending up with more Honestly Nevermind.
I think that totally. I that totally tracks to me. And I think another thing is, I also think there's a danger with dance music that you probably don't see in other genre crossovers.
Mhm.
And there's a who's that guy? Saint John. He has that song Roses, right? He's more of an
Oh
R.
yeah, 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 yeah.
He's more
He's
of an
getting
yeah, he's more of an
yeah,
R&B singer, right? Like he's not really hip hop.
right.
But like he has spoken out because like Roses had that dance remix that like blew up and like is so popular.
Yeah.
And like he kind of has a little bit of resentment towards a type of audience. Look at me, look at me. A
Yep.
type of audience that only cares about that one song,
Hmm.
and like doesn't engage with his music fully or completely at all. And it's like, yeah, I can understand that level of resentment. Uh,
You've heard that. That reminds me. You've heard the I think it's Hame HVME
yeah,
remix of Travis Goosebumps.
oh no, I have not.
It's like a synth remix of that, and
Yeah,
it's I think very much the same vein.
that's interesting. That's
I'm gonna send it
interesting.
to you.
Yeah, send it to me. I'll listen to it after. But yeah, I think dance is probably like the one that's like the most contentious. I think
Yeah,
probably the most controversial one is the next one. That's rock. Because like I feel like those have always been like the yin and yang of popular music to a certain extent.
hmm yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? Because this is where I think the conversation of aesthetics versus actual
This is
content
very much
becomes.
yes, I completely agree, right? Because like I feel like a very authentic like rock hip hop crossover is something like Rage Against the Machine,
Yeah.
right? I think like that is probably I still think to this day that's the gold standard. I think another one this is going even farther back would maybe be something like when Anthrax and Public Enemy made a song together,
Yeah. True.
Bring the Noise.
Yeah.
Uh but now like especially nowadays like it seems like people just like want to put on rock aesthetics. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
anybody's gonna throw on Rick Owens and like boom,
yeah,
done.
and,
And
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 like
there are artists who have paved the way for that too. Like Lil Uzi Vert is like I don't he's not the first, but
he's
I
not the
think
first, but he definitely
people like
brings
him have brought it to the mainstream,
and
like
he's brought in a
heavy.
lot of rock aesthetics without any rock sounds, right? And like
Yeah.
I don't think there's any problems with that, but I think that's observably what's going on.
Until this most recent album where he released your favorite cover ever.
Worst album of the year, yeah. Dude. Like
Disagree,
I
but
don't know
I
how
understand what you're
that
saying.
one's, dude.
Worst album of the year? I really doubt it.
Just for the CS alone, like the fact that he sung, recorded, edited, mastered, listened back, passed it to his label, and then said, "This sounds good." No, done. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think I was just very disappointed because I really, really liked his performance that we saw like a week before.
Hmm.
Right. So like it was just like one of those things where like expectations are really, really the death of everything.
Yep.
Uh,
Expectations are the thief of joy.
yeah. So like, um, and then like I feel like whenever you hear like artists authentically doing rock, it feels like they do it under a different label, like Wizard,
Yeah,
right? Where it's like,
totally.
and I can definitely hear the argument that like Wizard is like, pro. I think Wizard's a genre crossover. I think you can definitely say that, but it's not a Kid Cudi album. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, no.
Um, I also think like it's hard to define like what that is. Like what is a rock crossover? Like does Brockhampton count because they have long guitar solos? Maybe, maybe not. Like I also think like what kind of rock? Because rock is just such a a large genre, and I think that's like where like a lot of artists who are trying to pull rock sounds, especially as I think it gets trendier and trendier, like mess up. Like that was my big issue with Tizo Touchdowns, like last album, is that
Hmm.
like yeah, it sounded like rock. It sounded like a very generic, like uninspired version of rock. Whereas like, if he would have made it like every song on there like an arena rock album mixed with R&B, or, like a hardcore album mixed with R&B. But we want to talk about an artist who like does multiple genres without mixing them. We could talk about Tizo.
Yeah,
Like he'll literally stop
it's
a song
weird.
and like,
Yeah, it's like, all right, now y'all go and listen to this.
and I don't hate that. Like I don't hate that album. Like I've been revisiting it more than I would care to admit, to be honest. But
Yeah,
like, so like, this is not coming from a place of shade. But yeah, it seems like if we're talking about rock, you either have like individual songs like "Erase Me" that really pop, or you have like just rock bands who like have rappers. I think like Mike
Death
Shinoda
Grips.
from like Linkin Park. Death
Yeah,
Grips is a great pivot to like
yeah,
the last one, because I think like experimental music, because I think it's so interesting, because like there's experimental hip hop, which is like a subgenre of hip hop, and then there's
yeah,
like experimental music, and it's like, what's the line there? Like, I think there is a world of difference between any of Death Grip's album and like Scaring the Hose, and like Scaring the Hose is like called experimental, and it's like, okay, like where, like what are we talking about here? Like, and I'm like, where do you see that line is as?
it's tough. I feel like I don't know or I don't listen to these particular subgenres
Yeah.
enough to be able to really define a
Yeah, neither
line.
do I. I think this one specifically was just like an observation I had, that like there's experimental music, like drone and shit, and then
Yeah,
there's experimental hip hop, and it's like, and I feel like things get labeled experimental hip hop like very broadly. Like once again, like Scaring the Hose versus Death Grips. Like I think like those are as far apart as something like Denzel Curry and Rage Against the Machine. Like,
yeah. It's funny because we were talking earlier about Fantano, and Fantano has a video where he addresses a comment somebody made about like how clearly there are more genres of rap than like other types of music because it's newer and there's more diverse sounds. And then
that's
he goes on to like
that doesn't
rate
make
your
any sense.
music. I know. And he goes on to rate your music and he pulls up like what are like the community created subgenres and stuff. And it's like, well, none of this actually means anything because anybody can quantify it however the fuck they want. And that's like where we're getting into experimental here. It's like there are a
Yeah,
lot of things that could be classified as experimental that aren't necessarily, right? I mean, it's really tough to just pin something down,
and the
I
other thing,
think.
is that like I feel like more than anything else, experimental is like time dependent, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah. I mean,
I think this may have been a stretch even back then, but like
yeah.
808s and Heartbreaks, people called that experimental, right? And like there was some validity to that in the moment, but now it seemed like if you showed that to someone, you would be like, this sounds not experimental at all. Like,
And I've been on a Talking Heads kick because of the film that I went and saw, and that's
yeah,
the same kind of thing. It's like that was experimental in
yeah,
1983,
exactly.
not anymore. Like, yeah,
Hip hop as a genre in and of itself was like considered experimental in like the 80s,
yeah,
and countercultural and subversive. Although I think those are necessarily two different things. You know, gonna talk about Brian Eno for a second time. But
yep.
like, you have artists like that who like, equally make albums and also make like music for airports and shit like that. And they're just like very interested in almost in like the science of music.
I was gonna say I'll see you and raise you, Giorgio Moroder or
Yeah.
Giovanni Giorgio,
Yeah. Giovanni Giorgio.
like
No.
yeah, Devo in general,
Yeah.
like all that stuff.
Yeah. I do like Devo. But yeah, no, it's just like, and I guess like a question is because I know like when we did the Scaring the Hose review, my least favorite episode, um, like we talked about how you and Purvis just like weren't necessarily the biggest fans of like experimental hip hop, period. And like I guess like my question I wanted to ask is like, what is something that you would want from that?
I don't. It's tough, right? Like I think that something that, and this is just like rooted in theory, so don't take it too seriously, but
This is a
like
podcast. Everything is rooted in theory.
right, but I'm talking like there's like some like music theory of like it's like listenability scaling
Yeah.
of like surprise versus expectations, and there's like a scale for it. But I think music that is experimental, that is less reliant, not maybe not reliant, but less focused on the surprise element a lot. Because I feel like that's something that a lot of this genre of music has had in common, right? Scaring the Hose, I think, ranks very highly on like surprise when it comes to the tracks and like the way sounds are integrated into the mixing or the production. And it's like, yeah, that's J Pig Mafia doing his thing, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I don't think that I don't think that all experimental hip hop has to have that to be experimental, and I don't think that that's something that needs to be like a commonality in that space,
That's an
right? So I,
interesting take.
I think that you can make something experimental without it being too
Alienating.
multimedia, too multimedia, I guess also because it's
Yeah.
like
I
you're
feel like that is.
drawing stuff in.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's just like it's a sign of the times, because like multimedia projects have just never been easier to make,
Yeah,
and like
true.
there's something inherently exciting about it. I don't think any of us will ever forget the because the internet rollout, right?
Yeah,
Like, uh, but not everything can be that. They can't all be zingers, you know. So yeah, no, I agree, and I think like what I just want from experimental music, and I think this is why I like Scaring the Host so much, is it just seems like the R&D department. You know, it's like I don't know if any of these sounds are going to catch on, but I'm willing to bet someone's going to use them to better. Someone's going to take like some of these ideas,
hmm
and one could even say that like at least for me, like someone took like the ideas of like Death Grips of making things on like those like old like MXP. I don't know what it's called, like the little like mixer thing, like um, and like this is the development of it, right? But it feels like experimental music more than anything else is probably the hardest genre to nail down. It's like a ghost. So I guess, do you have something else you want to say?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I do wanna talk about
it's
one last thing before we sign off on this genre. Before we sign off on this, and that is, where is there anything we want to see? Right? Are there
hmm.
areas of crossover that we want to be investigated more? More? Is there things that we're done with? I think personally, like I'll never get tired of R&B hip hop crossovers. Like to me,
Yeah, I was
that's just like the winning formula. It's the oldest. It's the most common. It is the one that will never get old.
I was gonna say if
Right,
we consider sampling to be crossover, then bring back Chipmunk Soul. God damn it.
dude. I love Chipmunk Soul, and like you don't. You could just listen to Griselda at 1.5 speeds. like,
I
uh,
also think of like Pusha T, like Dreaming of the Past, where that's John Lennon doing the
yeah,
backing vocal, and it's like, okay, that's pretty cool.
yeah, that's very cool. I like that, and I like the more like not live, but like bringing artists in from other genres to collaborate on this. Like it's the Gorillaz thing we talked about, right? Those are such effective genre crossovers because Damon Albarn gets actual rapper. He gets Popcan and Deltron to come in and do
Oh,
those parts,
I
right?
figured it out.
Yeah.
What I want out of experimental or like avant-garde, like if we want to see some avant-garde music get created, get everybody who's on the Opium label to do a Tiny Desk concert.
No.
Yes.
God.
Ken Carson Tiny Desk concert and make him come up with the sounds that would substitute for whatever the fuck is going on this track.
God.
Same for Cardi. Come on.
Yeah. He just can't. He just literally can't. Like he can barely do regular concerts. Like,
Facts.
like, uh, but
God.
yeah, I think that's the thing I want, and specifically with rock, I want to see like if there are going to be artists who are pulling in rock sounds, I want them to see rock artists pulling them in. Like I could just, could you imagine how much better "How Did You Sleep Last Night" would sound if Franz was involved?
Or Kendrick Turnstile collab album when.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Kendrick is I think Kendrick just does it so well. Like when he mixes,
Yeah.
like when he mixes funk, when he mixes like more like jazzier stuff for Mr. Morale, right? I think he does it very well, but he just doesn't do it a lot, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
using like slide guitar. I don't know if it's actually slide guitar, but like whatever's going on Damn on like
Yeah.
Pretty much the whole album. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of that.
But yeah, no, it's
Oh, Pride, that's the one where it's got like the sliding
oh
guitar up and
yeah.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like XXX with has U2 on it. I can't believe
Yeah.
that song is good. I could not believe that song was good. Like
Yeah, it's an
yeah.
experience.
But yeah, I think this is a topic we can revisit with Purvis one day if we find a way to repackage it. But I just think the idea of like, to me, I think this is where true creativity lives. I think like it's taking things from one genre and putting it in another, you know. And I also think, like you said before about sampling, I think like because hip hop is so sample based, like it just makes it the perfect breeding ground,
Hmm.
you know. Um, but yeah, no, just bring like if you're going to mix genres, bring artists from those genres in, and I think that's like the most important part.
Yeah, I mean that's valid. You got to have somebody who's actually in the space to give it some kind of validity, I think. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it's just kind of like a it's not like you're poaching it, but it's like you're borrowing without maybe the context to give it its significance, or it's like make it as good as possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So should we move on to recommendations and then below this pop stands?
Let's do it.
All right. You go first.
My first one is very 80s, still in the Talking Heads vein, but not Talking Heads. I'm talking Tom Tom Club, Genius
Yeah.
of Love, classic, certified classic. You'll know it the second you hear
Oh,
it.
I know.
All the,
I know. Genius of Love. Is that the one's like dun
yep,
dun dun? Yeah,
the
we
one that
used to.
everyone's gonna know from memes.
Yeah, from
Yes,
Mariah Carey. Yeah, Mariah Carey's Fantasy samples it.
yeah.
Yeah, in portfolio school, me and my friends had a bit where we would go into places and put $20 in touch tunes and cue that up unskippably 6 times. Uh,
All right, John Mulaney.
yeah, we did that exact bit.
What's new,
Um,
Pussycat?
yeah. So my first song is I've been doing a lot just because like think about like the end of the year is coming up, and especially because like it hasn't been too dense of a year. I've been going back and like re-listening to my favorite albums from the year, and like just thinking like how they all chop up. And the album that was released last week is a big reason for that. Um, what I've been doing is I'm spending a lot of time with the bonus tracks that were released for one of my favorite albums. We talked about it a bunch on this episode, Scaring the Hose. I'm recommending no 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 no. Just
Got it.
goes on forever.
Yeah. There we go. Let's see. My second one, I'm gonna take it back. I'm gonna do now if I can remember what it's called. Um, I Feel Fine by the Beatles.
Oh, I Feel Fine by the Beatles.
There it is. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. And then my
Just a
second
little.
one, my last one before we call it quits for the night.
Hmm.
As a little teaser for next week, this song has just I heard it once last Friday, and now it's like, gotta listen to this song every 2 hours or I'm gonna die. And it's Costas by West Side Gun, Benny the Butcher, and Conway the Machine. His anesthesia hasn't even worn off, and he's in there like that. My God. Fourth and long, we go for it. We don't do punts. I love football references. We don't get them nearly enough.
No.
Unless you're listening to Action Bronson.
Yeah, I mean that's all that is.
Just sports references and food.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
Italian beef and like a Phillies,
I
like
got,
an Eagles game.
I got a Italian beef, like the socks in the cup. I don't know. I can't do. I could do like the Action Bronson voice pretty good. I'm just like I can't do like any like I can't do meter like at all.
Not with that attitude.
No, it's like very hard. Like I can do music, but the thing is, it just takes so much like cognitive muscle.
I was gonna say that'll be your the next big experimental thing will just be off meter and it'll be used just trying to get on meter.
Yeah, just trying to do it. Just trying to like, just do. Is this a song? Is this a song? Is this a song? Does this even
You'll
count?
you'll come across so goddamn humble in all the interviews. You're like, I'm just trying to do it. I'm just trying to
I'm
do it. And
trying to
everyone's
make a
like,
song. I'm trying to just make a song.
Everyone's like, he is the moment right now. How does he do it?
It's just me going like. I think the thing about like music is like in order to do it, you have to internalize a lot of math, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so I was talking about how my brain works with my girlfriend this week, and we were talking about math, and it's like when you think of a math problem, when you think of 1 plus 12, do you see
Mhm.
a 1 and a 12 in your head? It's like
No.
I don't. I see the word ONE and I see the word TWELVE. I should have picked an easier word to spell.
He was meant to write.
All right, that's the show, guys. So thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe. We got to remember to start saying that. We are much more popular on YouTube than on podcasting platforms.
Smash that like button.
Smash that
Don't
like
forget to
button.
subscribe.
Hit the
And
bell as well if you don't hate us. It's like, what's that? You didn't sign up? You're crazy. Like,
pretty cringe.
yeah.
We need to have one of those. We need to have one of those Fantano outros, like the rhyming
Yeah,
one.
we gotta write it. We should ask Shaw to write it for us.
Oh my god. I don't know. I don't think he'll talk to us anymore after your confession tonight.
I think he will. Like,
We'll see.
all right. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.